CNN host Brian Stelter played a clip of a death threat he received on his show. Originally, the death threat was on C-SPAN, and then he's going to play it here. And he's going to link this issue to Trump. Let's watch, and then we'll discuss.
Attacks on the media are having an effect. Threats against reporters are on the rise. But instead of me just telling you that, I want you to hear it for yourself. On Friday, a caller to C-SPAN said he's going to shoot me and Don Lemon if he sees us. Now, let me just preface this by saying I'm not asking for sympathy. I don't think I'm in extreme danger. I know some of my colleagues get much worse threats than I do. CNN has a great security team, and we know how to handle this stuff. And this problem is not confined to CNN. People at Fox News and other outlets have to deal with this garbage too. But these kinds of threats are coming in more often. So take a listen. Here's the phone call.
Don, State College, Pennsylvania, supports the criticism of the media. Don, you are on the air.
Good morning.
Morning.
It all started when Trump got elected. Brian Stelter and Don Lemon from CNN called Trump supporters all racist. They don't even know us.
Okay, let me just stop it right there. I've never called all Trump supporters racists. Neither has Don Lemon. So what this guy is about to say is predicated on a lie.
They don't even know these Americans out here, and they're calling us racist because we voted for Trump? Come on, give me a break. They started the war. I see him, I'm going to shoot him. Bye.
So he says we started a war, so if he sees us, he's going to shoot us. So where did the caller get the impression that I called all Trump supporters racist? I don't know, but I do know that the night before on Fox, Sean Hannity played a 2-year-old clip of me asking if racial anxiety was a factor in Trump's rise. Obviously, researchers have proven that yes, racial anxiety and resentment was a factor, but that's not the same as calling all Trump supporters racist. And I don't know if the C-SPAN caller watched Hannity. I'm not blaming Hannity. I just thought the timing was odd. Friday's threatening phone call on C-SPAN is just a tiny illustration of the threats that are out there. Many journalists who cover politics say they are receiving more and more threats nowadays in the Trump era. MSNBC's Katie Tur sounded the alarm earlier this week.
I hope you get raped and killed, one person wrote to me just this week. Raped and killed. Not just me, but a couple of my female colleagues as well. And in case you want to argue that this has nothing to do with the president, the most recent note I got ended with MAGA.
Of course, there's always been unhinged people in the world, but journalists are concerned now. As Bret Stephens wrote in the New York Times on Saturday, journalists are concerned we are approaching a day when blood on the newsroom floor will be blood on the president's hands. I hope he is wrong.
Okay, so I have a lot to say about this. First and foremost, let's just immediately address the main point here. Any and all death threats are by definition despicable and wrong and immoral and unethical. And I don't think there should be any equivocation on that point. In fact, I think that that's a point that Trump should make, and he should make it more often. If he's done it at all, I really don't know, to be honest. That's not cool. And I've been on the receiving end of that. I get it all the time. Of course I get it all the time. But the thing is, anybody in the public eye is going to get it. And I think especially if you're in the public eye and you're involved politically, no matter where you fall politically, you're going to get that. So perhaps my skin is a little thick and I have personal experience with it. So, but again, at the same time, I think it's just an utterly obvious point that everybody should condemn any kind of death threats because they're wrong. They're just wrong. So that's the first point. Okay. The second point, though, is I fear not just that Trump's rhetoric sometimes goes too far, which it's true. He says he calls the media the enemy of the people, and he just started doing that recently, and that I do think that's too far. It's one thing to scream fake news. It's one thing to repeatedly and aggressively go after the media. I'm totally fine with that. Saying enemy of the people, I do think goes a little too far, though. But I'm also concerned that now mainstream media, corporate media, is going to take what the current climate and use it to cement their victim narrative and then use these kinds of issues to deflect all sorts of legitimate criticism. And that also annoys me. That really does. Because it's so easy now, when there's any criticism coming from either the right or the left, to just kind of swat it aside and say, you know, oh, this is irrational and this is, you know, deeply against the First Amendment and free speech. Like, no, it's not. And actually, if you guys cared about the First Amendment and free speech and a free press, wouldn't all of you be supporting WikiLeaks and Julian Assange? I mean, agree or disagree with them, you can't say that what they reported isn't, number one, very important, and number two, that it shouldn't be reported. I mean, if you learn that the DNC rigged the primary, yeah, a good news organization reports on that. And everything they showed was true. It was accurate. So that's what the media is supposed to be doing. Like, oh, here we have this information on very powerful people in the establishment. Yeah, we're going to run with that. But instead, no, they're all totally cool with the suppression of Julian Assange and WikiLeaks. But then they clutch their pearls and they shriek whenever Trump says bad things about them. Like, okay, so you think mean words at a rally are more against the First Amendment and the Constitution than an attempt to, you know, literally arrest people for reporting on important information that should have been reported. Literally extradite Assange to the U.S. That's what they're trying to do. At least that's what's been reported recently. The Intercept said that, Ecuador is going to give up their support of Assange, and then you're going to have the UK. He's going to be extradited to the UK, and then the UK will send him to the US, and there are charges. Okay, so that if you really care about the First Amendment of free speech, you should be the first ones to defend Julian Assange and WikiLeaks. Okay? Honestly, even though Alex Jones is a loathsome conspiracy theorist, and he's wrong about virtually everything he says, and he does borderline incitement sometimes. I don't think he's actually done incitement, but I do think it's borderline. But if you really believe in the First Amendment, you should be out there saying, okay, why is every fucking platform now, including YouTube, banning Alex Jones permanently? But see, this is what annoys me about the media, is that they clutch their pearls when it's mild criticism of them, but when there's real systemic attempts to silence people like, again, WikiLeaks and Julian Assange, who did important work, they actually support the crackdown on them. So it's like, hey, asshole, if you wanted more people to defend you, maybe you should have been defending Julian Assange. Maybe you should have been, even people you don't agree with, maybe you should have defended them on principle, but you didn't do it. So, and that goes to CNN, that goes to MSNBC, that goes to all the mainstream media outlets. Now, again, I want to be clear. This does not mean that death threats are okay. They're never okay. That's not okay. And yes, Donald Trump should stop saying enemy of the people. Absolutely. But at the same time, that doesn't then therefore mean that everything the media has pushed for, has said, every story that they've run with is factual, and that certainly doesn't mean that they do a good job. And that certainly doesn't mean that they're oh so oppressed and under attack because President Meanie Pants said some harsh words against them. Again, he shouldn't say enemy of the people, and also let me be clear that whenever Trump screams fake news, he's only saying it because they run bad stories about him. So if the media did fake news all day long, but they also did nothing but positive stories about Donald Trump, he would praise that media and say that's not fake news. How do I know that? Because he praises Fox all the time. Fox is wall-to-wall fake news, but they also happen to be nice to Trump. So Trump's definition of what is fake and what isn't fake is not real. It's just what serves my interest, what blows me the most. So I'm not saying Donald Trump is like above the fray here and he's like correct in his criticism of the media. But what I am saying is it does strike me as really annoying that they're using the fact that Trump is generally against the media. They're now using this to play like the woe is me card and the card of, well, obviously we must be correct and obviously we must be right and we must be upholding the fine tradition of a free media if Donald Trump is coming after us. And that's just not true. You're the assholes who push propaganda endlessly that got us into the Iraq War. You're the assholes who just gleefully reported the Pentagon's line when we had the situation happen in Syria, where before there was even an investigation about an alleged gas attack, they were bombing the Assad government. Before there was an investigation, and every mainstream media outlets were just like, yeah, of course, we're going to bomb them, and it's because Assad did it. Why are you saying he did it? You're just taking Pentagon talking points and fucking printing them. Why are you doing that? You're supposed to ask for evidence. You're supposed to be the people that are the watchdog of the government, not the lapdog of the government. You're acting like they're a lapdog when you do that. A lapdog to the CIA and to the deep state. So, I mean, for fuck's sake, man, it's like, just because the president is going after you does not mean, oh, you're angels and you did nothing wrong ever and you're so good at your job and you're really upholding the fine American tradition of free journalism. Because you're actually not doing that. You suck at your job. And they're using situations like this to deflect legitimate criticism. Okay? But again, I want to be clear for the 930th time, that does not mean that death threats are okay. They are never okay under any circumstance. And yes, Donald Trump should fucking chill out with his enemy of the people garbage. Because that does foment a sort of hysteria. And that's not okay, man. It's not okay. So I have a criticism to go all around here. The media are not angels who didn't do anything wrong. They routinely do a shitty job, and they often do fake news. But Donald Trump only screams fake news and only goes after the media because they're mean to him. So he's mean right back to them. Even if what the media says is true about Trump, and probably 70% of the time it is true, well then, yeah, they're correct and Trump is wrong. So Trump is just doing it for selfish motives, which is obvious, but he should chill with the enemy of the people thing because that does go too far. And yeah, it does lead some people who are on the fringes and who are not all there psychologically, they might take action. And then it's not that Trump is directly responsible as a result of that, but he certainly is helping lay the groundwork for something terrible to happen. So I wish the media would do a better job overall, and I wish Donald Trump would stop calling the media the enemy of the people. There's just a lot of shittiness to go around here. As a final point, Trump makes it easier for the media to not own up to how poor of a job they're doing and have done over the past few decades. So again, death threats, never okay. Trump is feeding into this horrible anti-media hysteria. That's all true. But it's also true that Trump makes it very easy for them to not own up to how bad of a job they've done. And by the way, even before Trump came to power, trust in media was at a historic all-time low. So I know they just want to blame Trump and say he's the reason for the negative perception of us and all that. But no, people have hated them for a while because they've always, at least in the modern era, they've always been corporate, they've always been shitty, they've always served the status quo in the establishment. They aren't very good, they aren't very objective. So I think both those things can be true at the same time, that he goes way too far and also that they generally do a terrible job.